Hey, good morning, everybody. This is David McLeod coming to you from Belmont, California. And as you can see from the picture in the background, Tommy is not at home. But you are there, aren't you, Tommy?
Hey, everybody. I'm here coming to you from Alaska. You see in the background, that's Denali National Park. And we're here on a family vacation this week, coming to you from the great last frontier, as they say. So welcome, everybody. On today's show, we're going to talk about some stuff again. Even though we're outside in the great outdoors, we're going to talk about stuff on the inside. And today, we're talking about something we kind of nicknamed the internal hostage situation. And we'll get into that here momentarily. But David, thanks for that grand welcome, and thanks for allowing me to be goofy and walk up with a walking stick and my goofy hat.
Goofy?
Internal
What do you mean? What do you mean goofy, dude? Isn't that your normal state?
It is my normal state of affairs is wearing a mountain man hat and carrying a hiking stick. Yeah. So internal hostage situation. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, self-expectations. Anybody have any of those? Anybody have any of this stuff that goes on inside of ourselves that we hold ourselves to such high standards, right? Such high standards that that we can tend to make ourselves miserable. David, I don't know if you've ever experienced any of that, but anything that sounds like you've been there before or done that?
Are you kidding? I can't even say that I've completely freed myself of that behavior. It's something that's, for me, it's an ongoing practice. But what I have noticed over the years is that the amount of time I have to spend liberating myself from that hostage situation is getting less and less and less. And it's also getting easier and easier and easier. Because what I've noticed over the course of time is that, you know, I had to really rein in my ego mind. I had to kind of take it by the ears and shake it and say, hey, guy, I'm in charge, not you. Well, it took a while for him to understand that I really was in charge. But now when I say, okay, thank you so much for your input and thanks for the, you know, all the stuff that you want, now he actually listens and says, okay, I trust you now, you've got it. Whereas before, it was never like that. So my ego mind was very much like that mad scientist guy that I included in our email this week. And sometimes he still shows his face and I can hear the voice cackling in the background. And, you know, sometimes I like to laugh too, so maybe I'll laugh, but now I don't cringe as much, and I find it easier to get out of that.
Yeah, so what does that look like, and what does that feel like? I was talking to a person a while back, and she was actually going through the class, and one of the exercises I was having people do was make a list of the expectations of what you think maybe your perfect partner should be, right? And I think we've done these exercises before. Or your perfect mother, or your, you know, this image of the perfect person in your life. And she said, you know, I did that for a little bit. Then I started thinking about myself. And she started making the list of all the expectations that she had of herself. And I totally got that. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I've got to be the perfect worker. I've got to be the perfect spiritual seeker. I've got to be the perfect husband. I've got to be the perfect brother. I've got to be all these expectations. And you can feel this, right? They're weights, it's heaviness, and it's stuff then that creates a lot of the noise in our head, a lot of the back talk, like, oh, you idiot, oh, I can't believe you screwed up again, oh, you did that, right? All this talk that goes on, and it's very disturbing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what high expectations we hold of ourselves, to the point that we kind of hold ourselves hostage, right? We hold ourselves in contempt, we hold ourselves in prison, we hold ourselves to such high standards that it's just hard to relax and hard to enjoy life and hard to just be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like we put ourselves in this prison, and then we kind of condemn ourselves without even going through the formal phase of a trial. We don't even call any witnesses. We just say, no, you're guilty. That's it. Now off you go and suffer the consequences of being guilty. And it's very debilitating. It's disempowering. It's self-limiting. I think it could be like one of the root causes of depression. You know, I think that people who allow themselves to get caught up in this unconscious tape loop of constant criticism really do themselves a disservice. If you can just take a moment and listen and hear the voice and just become aware of it, and don't necessarily do anything about it right away, but become aware of it so that when it happens in unconscious mode, you can catch it more quickly, and then you can start doing something about it. And then you might want to figure out, well, where did this voice come from anyway? I mean, it might sound like my voice now, but I don't think it was always my voice. I think it was the voice of my mom or my dad or my uncle or my teacher or my politician or my minister or somebody else out there who had this high expectation, and I took it on, personalized it, and made it my own. Only I did it with such enthusiasm, shall we say, that I kind of lost sight of who I really am in the process. And so I've ended up giving myself up. And that is probably one of the most painful and damaging things I can do.
Yeah, you said a lot of things in there, and to go to the back early to the beginning of it, this root cause of depression. I know I've been in depressing points in my life, and there was a lot of I wouldn't say self-hatred, but self-loathing, right? And that's from these expectations that we take them in from other places growing up. There's a lot of expectation around us, a lot of expectation to be the good child and the good student and not good at this and the good that. And then that must be the way this world works. I have to have all these expectations. And if my mom says it, my dad says it, and the priest says it, and the uncle says it, and the school teacher says it, and the scout leader says it, everyone says it, then I must take that on, and it must be true. And now I put that on myself, and now I've got this giant backpack of expectations that I walk around with. And if we don't meet them, if we don't quite succeed, if we don't get the A's or the B's or whatever grades are set in any aspect of life, we get pretty down on ourselves. We get pretty maybe self-abusive in our own mind, right? The voices that come up that say some really nasty things sometimes, and no wonder why we feel sad and we're depressed and we can get bummed out. And a lot of the people that I talk to are like they want to be back to being me. They want to be back in their own power. I want my power back. Well, okay, how are we giving it away? If this is the way that we're giving it away, I get an echo coming back. It's getting worse. If there's coming back to us, then we're going to be in that cage, David. And so we're talking about it. So let's echo on away. I got distracted. I was like, where can you take that one?
Well, the first thing I wanted to say is that you were talking about how we pile abuse upon ourselves and start judging ourselves and saying all kinds of negative things and stuff like that about ourselves. And what I've noticed about that is the more I do that, what happens is that self-judgment starts to leak out. And then I start judging other people. And that's when real pain can start happening, because now I'm creating pain not only for myself, but for the people who are closest to me, who happen to be within, 2 or 3 feet of my circle of influence or something like that. And that's when it can become really, really painful for other people and painful for me. And so if the cycle, it grows and expands and gets worse and worse and worse until we get to the place where we actually feel like we're in a prison from which there is no escape. And that is just like the most horrible place to be for anybody, I'm sure. And I think that's where people start taking drugs. They start doing other things to try and relieve the pain. They try and, find a way out of this thing that they don't even realize that they've created for themselves. And so part of what we're doing here, Tommy, is we're raising awareness about it. Our entire show is all about helping people to live better lives. And so this is just another, coming at it from one more angle.
It is, right? And at the core, at the center of all these different angles, all these different ways we kind of come at it and open it up and try to crack the nut here or blow away some of the dirt there, it all comes down to what you always say very clearly, and we always say, is that inside you're an amazing being. And I'm sometimes these terms, I just want to get back to being me. I just want to get back to being me. And what is that? And I say that now in my head, I want to get back to being me. And that me is that me I knew maybe as a child, maybe I had glimpses of it still in my teen years, maybe, you know, and now it's coming clearer again. So I'm getting back to being me. And what's not me is all the stuff piled on, right? And you alluded to it, David, this mound of stuff that we just are underneath, buried under. And I think you hit upon it nicely when you said that this self-expectation, this internal hostage situation could be a pretty serious root cause of a lot of the noise, because if we're being judgmental of ourselves, then you're right, you know, and we're finger pointing, then we're going to be judgmental of others, and then relationships start to be crappy, and everything we're doing is, you know, not working well, and again, it just heaps it on and heaps it on and heaps it on like the mountains behind me. So, yeah, I think we're into a good kind of root cause here, right, to be able to dismantle.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it becomes, the more we allow this to keep building, the harder it is for us to recognize the problem, because we're buried under the symptoms, you know? And I think this is true of a lot of sicknesses that happen in our world. We have symptoms, we treat the symptoms, but we're not getting down to the root cause because we don't know what the root cause is. And so we treat some symptoms, maybe they go away, and yet some more symptoms show up, so we deal with those, and we end up just going crazy. If we can dive down right to the inner core of who we are, if we can take a risk to do that and stop listening to the ego mind altogether, which is a challenge for sure, then what we can do is we can get back to that place that you're talking about, Tommy, that place of being who I really am, the real me, that part that I knew very, very clearly when I was first brought into this world, and which over time kind of got lost because of the slow pile on of this stuff that we created in our lives. And so it will take some work. And I wish I could tell you that it was all play and joy and happy stuff, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to go through the crap to get down to the real you. Once you get there, then you can see that it's all crap. Then you can see that it's all bullshit, and you can do something about it. And you can say, thank you, ego mind, for all of your gifts, and now I am saying no more. I am me now. That's what I think the challenge is.
And in that challenge, in kind of uncovering me, getting back to who I am, sometimes I don't know. It's not an on-off switch either. It's not like one day the ego mind is here and the one day it's not. You said it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But I think there's also a balance in here too. I don't think it's, you know, black and white. I don't think it's, you know, no ego and all me. So sometimes I use this metaphor of being like an aircraft. Like imagine your body's a big plane. And at the front of the plane that flies the plane are two seats. There's a co-pilot seat and there's a pilot seat. And the co-pilot's the one who knows how to flip the switches and fuel the jet and do all the mechanical stuff of how to make it go. And then the pilot is the one who knows the long distance, you know, where the plane's going, the general flow of, you know, of what path to follow. And somewhere early on in our lives, that co-pilot, the ego mind, decided it could do it all, and somehow just whacked the pilot over the head at some point, gagged, bound, blindfolded, tied it up, and threw it in the back of the plane. But I think there definitely is room for both the pilot and the co-pilot in this situation, right? Our ego mind, our mind is going to be here thinking and figuring things out. Our pilot, kind of our intuition, our inner sense, our wisdom, kind of go. You know, we're one human being here. We've got a body, we've got a mind, we've got this spirit, and we just need to bring it back into harmony and back into balance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you know, this is something that I've often said in the past. I said, you know, we need our ego mind. Our ego mind is necessary for us to be able to navigate our way through this physical world. But we don't need it exclusively. And that's part of the problem that we have in our society. We are taught to be highly rational, to think about everything, to use your head and make sure that you're making all your decisions from a rational perspective, because God knows that those feely things aren't really the way we should be going, are they? They just get you in trouble. Well, the irony is the exact opposite is true. If we followed our feelings more and our thoughts less, I think we would find a lot less trouble in our world. And so that could make things way, way better for us. Oh,
I heard everything you're saying. I had a pop up, so I had to get rid of it so I could see you again.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Well, re-say what you just said, the last sentence.
I was just talking about, I was agreeing with you on the whole idea of having a pilot and a co-pilot, the ego mind and the soul working together, that, we can't allow ourselves to be influenced too much by the world that wants us to stay rational all the time. We have to allow ourselves to get into the combination of feelings. And I think one of the things I believe is that if we maybe spent more time in our feelings and less time in our thinking, the world in general, I think, would be a far better place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe we brought this up last week. I'm starting to separate some terminology, some lingo in my head of the word feelings and emotions.
Yep.
And the feeling is, to me, is more of I can feel things, I can sense things. It's like an energy sensing. The emotions, to me, kind of are a combination of thoughts and past events and maybe the feelings I had then. And somewhere in there, there's some clarity for me of feelings aren't touchy. It's not like woo-woo. It's not weird. It's just part of who we are, that ability to sense. That's why I use the word intuition a lot, or insight. Those are skills that we have when I am a being, when I'm a human being. And you said it, David, too much rational thought. It's almost like our computer has been overprogrammed. Too many programs, some viruses in there, some stuff that we need to clear off the hard drive. And when we clear some of the hard drive off, then our natural being, our natural energy being, comes back and it's there. It's not like we have to retrain it or learn new skills. It comes back out and it shines and it starts to work well, again, in balance. The form, as Eckhart says, the form and the formless. The form is our physical body and our mind, and the formless is that energy sense of us, that energy part of us that can sense and pick things up and feel what's going on.
Yeah. I think you and I have talked about this before, and I think that, well, I use the reverse terminology, because I think that emotion is just pure energy. That's all it is. It's just energy flowing through our body. And so for me, emotion corresponds to the words like joy, fear, sadness, and anger. Whereas feelings are an overloaded word. We use that word to mean all kinds of different things. And I think we do that because we innately understand that feelings are more than just emotions. They are emotions for sure, but they're also the sensations in the body that happen. They're also a combination of thoughts that come in. When you have a combination of sensation, emotion, and thought together, to me, that's what a feeling is. It's like all these things, and I'm trying to evaluate it, judge it, clarify it, understand it, all the rest of it, which requires thinking. And so if I can eliminate the thoughts and the sensations and come down to the pure emotion, I usually come down to words like, joy, fear, sadness, anger, words like that, love, gratitude, that sort of thing. And those are just kind of energetic forms. And I notice when I say each of those words that my body has a different kind of reaction, that my body kind of responds in certain different ways. In any event, regardless of what terminology we choose, I think that ultimately what we want is to get people out of their heads, out of the thinking part, and more into the feeling part, into the heart. And so whatever that looks like for you, I think is really the right way to go. Now, that's not to say we don't want to think. It's just to say that we don't want to put all of our evaluation, we don't want to value our thinking more than our feeling. We need to bring balance, as Tommy said, into the mix.
Yeah, again, getting back to where our minds get overstimulated by not only life and too much information and all the stuff coming in, but over a lifetime of it, again, piled up. Expectations of other people, again, coming back to holding ourselves hostage. It's important to kind of feel that and to look at that for real in your own life. So where in your life do you hold yourself accountable to some standards that maybe are unattainable? Maybe, you know, it was something set a long time ago. Maybe it was something you saw on TV last week. Maybe you saw a movie recently and you liked the way the actress was acting, or the love scene, the way that played out between these two couples, or between this couple, these two people. And now you have the expectation of, like, I should be more like that, right? I should. Now you've scratched off something on your list of self-expectations and you've put something else in there. And this gets back to this never-changing list, right? We have these lists of self-expectations, and they're always changing because we always see something else that we like. Oh, I'll take that off the list and I'll add this one. And we never really write this list down, right?
That's right.
It's just there, and when it's just there too, it's like a kind of rogue computer software program running in your mainframe, and it kind of messes up the decisions you're making, sometimes the words you're saying, sometimes the thoughts you're having, sometimes whatever that's coming through. And so these expectations, really need to take a look at those and see where they come up in life and where they come from.
Yeah, and as I was listening to you say that, I have the image of, you know, this big giant printer, you know, one line. It's a teletype kind of printer where it's just writing out one expectation after another. It's ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And on the other end, there's this great long miles and miles and miles of paper with all these expectations on them. And then miles and miles of paper on the other side of the printer with nothing yet printed on it. All kinds of room to write all kinds of new expectations. It's like it's a never-ending list. And that's kind of been going on in my life for sure. I mean, I recognize that, and I can really feel it. That's a great metaphor. Thank you.
Well, you brought it to mind and brought it to life, but yeah, I'm feeling that whole too, right? The paper that's out there and yet to come, and all the expectations we're carrying around with us. And if you bunch up all that paper and throw it again in your backpack, you can feel the weight. You can feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
And so where do these? What else? There's probably some core types of expectations we have of ourselves. There's in relationship, right? Because we want to always please somebody else. We want to always, impress somebody or please them or make them happy. So there's a lot of I'm feeling this in myself, a lot of self-expectations about wanting to make sure somebody else is having a good time, or make sure that we're pleasing them, or make sure that. So that's something to look at. What kind of pockets do these self-expectations arrive in? And David, I'm not sure if that's picking up anything for you, but that's hitting home for me. Yeah. Oh,
absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes from, there's this societal message, I think, that we're all supposed to be, we're supposed to put everybody else ahead of ourselves. We're supposed to think of ourselves as less than everybody else. I mean, everyone else is more important than me. Well, think about the dynamic we're creating with that. If everybody has the belief that everyone else is more important than them, what is going on? It's like a total mind meld, It just completely trips up the mind. But what if the truth is nobody is more important than anybody else? What does that say? What if the truth is that I am just as important as you or the other person? What does that say?
And there's a fine balance there too, because while some of us may get in that mentality that we're here that we're not as important as somebody else, there are others of us that go the other way too and say, oh, I'm more important than everyone else. And it's a fine line, and it's a balance. That's part of this balance too, is to just ride that gentle wave. It's not the biggest wave. It's just riding that gentle wave of being in balance. That I'm just like everybody else. When it comes down to it, and the more I travel around this world, the more I meet people. I'm just meeting people just like me. We're having the same struggles. We're having the same relationship issues. We're having the same fears, the same worries, the same anxieties, the same stuff. Which is why what you teach, David, is universal. What I teach is the same. It doesn't matter what country you're in or who you meet or where they are in life. We all pretty much, human beings, all have the same kind of situations that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So we are all the same. And if you think you're better than, it's going to cause you trouble.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get in that judgment mode, right? And if you think you're less than then you're going to cause yourself trouble too.
Right.
So find yourself in with all of us. We're all in this together, right? Yeah. We're all in this ship together. And
I was going to say, I think that when I get into this place of thinking I'm better than somebody, or thinking that I'm stronger or this or that, more something than you are, what I believe that is just some kind of, that's my ego trying to compensate for the opposite belief, which is saying I'm not good enough. That's really what's going on when that happens. If I have this very, very unconscious, low-level belief that I'm not good enough, then, if I don't work on that and come to grips with where that belief came from, if I don't heal that belief and come to realize that I am perfectly good enough just as I am, then what happens is I start to come up with compensatory behaviors and identities and all the rest of it in order to make myself feel good enough. And sometimes in doing that, in order to make myself feel stronger, I might have to go out of my way to make you feel weaker. So I might engage in sarcastic talk, or I might talk behind your back about you to other people, or I might sabotage some project you're working on so that you look bad, and that makes me look good. This is the kind of thing that we engage in when our own self-belief is damaged. That's kind of what we have to uncover. And remember, what happens to somebody who's in an internal hostage situation? He already has all that stuff on top of himself. I have that on top of myself. You have it on top of yourself. What we need to do is go down inside, recognize the truth of who we really are, and start to just fling off this stuff because it just isn't true about us. And then we can start showing up as who we really are and be just as good as anybody else without having to have any need to be better.
Brilliantly said. And the whole time you were speaking there, I was kind of riding in this wave, right? This kind of center wave, kind of this nice wave in here in the center of kind of being in balance and being like in the kind of in the flow. And then when you were talking about so like let's go for a real life example of things we experience in life. People who somehow get insecure, right? So now they're below, they're thinking they're less than somebody else, so they're insecure. What do? Well, they spike up and they become like a bully, right? We bully other people, put other people down, so our insecurity doesn't feel so bad. And as I'm doing that, as I'm doing this, I'm spiking up and down. I'm spiking up and down. It's like a very jaggedy life. It's definitely not flow and balance. It's like spike up, spike down, spike up, and the behavior is very erratic, and it's very insane, and it's very noisy in the head.
Yep.
And we don't even know it, right? We just think, we're being a domineering boss or a domineering person in the relationship, and that's what we're supposed to be telling somebody else what to do. So we're playing the bully, although from the other person's perspective, that's what it looks like. From our perspective, we're just being headstrong. We're just being smart. We're being intelligent about things. But what we're doing is we're bouncing between this insecurity and overdominance, and it's so much. Can you feel it and just hear it in your head?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you're not in that space yourself? Can you imagine what it's like in the head of somebody who's bouncing all over the place like that?
Yeah.
Wow, it hurts just to think about it.
It does. Yeah. Well, so I guess what we're telling people is, first, as always, as with every issue that we've ever talked about, the first step is awareness. Just check in with yourself. Do you have expectations that are holding you hostage? Hold it. I want people to see that. Go ahead and do that again. Yeah.
Don't move. If you move, I'll give it to him. Everybody stand back.
Yeah. Anyway, so awareness. Become aware of your own dialogue inside your head. Become aware of the judgments and the expectations that you have of yourself. Once you become aware of them, then I think, as Tommy mentioned, Tony, I was thinking of your little act there. But anyway, as Tommy mentioned, write down your expectations so you can really get clear on what they are. Because if you don't know what they are, how can you do anything about them? And then just work through them and say, do any of these expectations make any sense? if they were meant to encourage me in some way, how could I rewrite them in a way that helps me to move in that direction rather than commanding me or holding me hostage to it? Those are, I mean, really, really powerful things that you can do.
Yeah, and do, right? Write them down. Get a piece of paper and a pen and write them down. Self-expectations. And there might be things that, you know, I expect myself to be a great parent. Okay. You don't have to be the best parent. You want to be a good parent. Well, then put some things in motion to make sure you're doing that. But the self-rating, like, oh my gosh, you know, my kids are going to end up being a mess because I've screwed up. That kind of self-talk is where the, you know, the insecurity comes in. So as David said, write them down and then think about something you can do to put some of that in a better light, to look at the positive side of things in there and not always be negative self-talk. Negative self-talk, self-hostage situation, internal hostage situation. And we want to break you out of that.
Right. Awesome. Tommy, thank you so much for sharing with me today and for coming from Alaska. Next week, friends, we're going to be talking about the mixed signals of change. We're going to have some fun with that idea. And I think part of that change is going to be that Tommy and I are going to be switching roles. I'm not going to be in Alaska, but he's going to be back home. There you go, Tommy.
Well, until then, everybody, peace out from Alaska. Love you all. See you next week.